अनिरोधमनुत्पादमनुच्छेदमशाश्वतम् अनेकार्थमनानार्थमनागममनिर्गमम् यः प्रतीत्य समुत्पादं प्रपञ्चोपशमं शिवम् देशयामास सम्बुद्धस्तं वन्दे वदतां वरम् न स्वतो नापि परतो न द्वाभ्यां नाप्यहेतुतः उत्पन्ना जातु विद्यन्ते भावाः क्वचन केचन. We are now in the 10th chapter out of 26 of the Dharmapada, soon approaching half time. During the half time, if you like, you can have a break, like is common in football games as well. As you know, the Buddha's teaching is all about the connection between the inner and the outer. The inner states that we cultivate not only in one life, but over many lives, are connected with the outer conditions that arise as a consequence of karma and of the conditions we attract and feel attracted towards. I remember there was a young gentleman, true story, who always felt a lot of chaos within himself, a lot of disturbance, some sort of aversion to himself, to situations, sort of psychologically difficult, perhaps depressed, or at least highly discontented. And this gentleman cultivated this over, I would say, 5 years. And before that, the gentleman wasn't like that. It was due to certain experiences that occurred that he went into a downward trail, a sort of akushala condition. We call this akushala. There are two trajectories. One is the kushala, the auspicious towards happiness. The other is the akushala. And the akushala is related to inner states. Akushala chitta, this is called in Sanskrit. And externally, now this is the interesting part for all of you. Externally, nothing was really bad. Nothing was really problematic for him. Actually, he had a good job. He had good friends. He had relatively good family members and all that. Externally, there was nothing in disorder. But there was this inner disorder, inner chaos, inner disorder. And unfortunately for this chap, he didn't really work on that. He did not apply any observational practice, observing, accepting, as we practice. And then, I can tell you, it suddenly transpired that after about 5 years of cultivating this, an external chaos appeared in his life. He met a lady who was extremely temperamental, totally chaotic. There is a term for it, I believe it is called borderline. There's sort of like a diagnosis, and everything went tipsy-turvy in his life. Everything became upside down. Everything became extremely difficult all of a sudden. So, what you in your modern language would say objectively became difficult. What originally was not difficult, actually externally, objectively became difficult. And I remember how that man told me, I think he was about 28 or so, he told me, now my inner chaos, I can really feel how it has come outside. It has spilled outwardly and has now manifested outwardly. And that was the point where he started seeking help. Now you see, from our perspective, had he sought help, I don't mean psychological help, I mean meditation, observing, dissolving these states, had he done so at the beginning, had he known the Buddha's teaching, had he done so at the beginning, I'm not claiming that it wouldn't have happened. You see, I'm not claiming that nothing would have happened externally, but I can guarantee you that kind of disorder would not have occurred. Why? He would have been much more mindful. He wouldn't have felt attracted to such a woman full of chaos. He wouldn't have had and this also happens the other way around. Please, the ladies out there, don't think I'm being anti-women. Not at all. It happens the other way around. Even more, right? There are more women who have terrible partners in men than the other way. So this is just an example I personally witnessed. That's why I'm giving you this example. So I can guarantee you he would have been much more mindful. He would not have let this inner sense of discontentment, who cares, nothing matters. He would not have let that attract him to that personality. It is very subtle. And my dears, it is not as if we can, it's not that we can claim omniscience and we say we always know and there we can see it's going to go wrong. It's not like that. But the general principles which the Buddha taught us, those are true, those are valid. That when there is a lot of chaos within, it can take time, but it will manifest. It really does. It does turn into outward situations. So we have to be careful with states of extreme aversion, states of extreme, any kind of extreme states. We have to be tremendously careful with them, because they tend to manifest, even if it takes time. So this example was really, really powerful to see. And he himself saw it. He told me, now I realize, now what you've always told me, I used to sort of try a little bit, not impose, but now what you've always told me has manifested. The inner has become the outer. Yeah? So this total attentiveness, total care for yourself, as if you are your own child or your best friend. What would you tell your best friend? If your best friend or your child has lots of chaos in them, you tell them, hey, my dear, be careful with that chaos. Be careful with that aversion. It tends to lead to outer problematic situations. So be very cautious with it. So the Buddha says, everyone is afraid of the stick, in the sense of being hurt. Everyone fears death. Putting oneself in another's place, one shouldn't hurt others. Everyone is afraid of the stick. Everyone holds on to their lives. Putting oneself in another's place, one shouldn't hurt others. One who seeks his own happiness or her own happiness by oppressing others who also desire to have happiness will not find happiness. One who seeks his own happiness or her own happiness by not oppressing others who also desire to have happiness will find happiness. Don't speak harshly to others. Those who are thus spoken to will respond, will retort. Malicious talk is indeed the cause of trouble, and the reaction will come back to you. Malicious talk means, you know what she said. Oh, you know what my beloved friend said about her. Right? That's malicious talk. If you can keep yourself calm and quiet, like a bell that is not ringing, you are sure to realize peace, and there will be no aversion in you. There will be no harshness or nothing that shakes you. It's a little difficult to translate these words here. As a cowherd drives his cattle to the pasture with a stick, so also aging, illness, and death drive beings. I'll explain this a little later. It's fascinating, very interesting example. A fool, or someone confused, immature is also a translation of this word. Someone immature, while engaging in negative actions, does not realize them to be negative, or states also, negative actions and states. But that confused or immature person suffers for their negative actions or states like one who is burnt by fire. One who does harm with weapons to others who are harmless and who should not be harmed will soon come to the consequences of that harm. Now, the verses take on a different direction. Now it is more about not going into extremes. And the context of this, for those of you who don't have an Indian background, is that in ancient India, there used to be a tendency, which you still find among modern sadhus and naga babas and all that, a tendency towards extremes. Smearing oneself with ashes, fasting so much till one has no energy left, all these extremes. That is the context now of the teaching, of the next teaching of the Buddha. He says that one cannot free one's being by going naked, by having matted hair, by smearing oneself with ashes, by fasting, by sleeping on the bare ground, by covering oneself with dust, by squatting in certain positions for extremely long times. Even if someone is beautifully adorned, meaning alankato, he says, alankato chepi. In Sanskrit, that would be alankritaha. Even if you have lots of alankara, like a beautiful, handsome person with lots of jewelry, a Rolex watch, so to speak. There are better watches than that. Even if one is beautifully adorned, if one is calm, insightful, restrained, and has laid aside aversion, anger, aversion, if one has laid it aside towards all beings, such a one indeed is a brahmana, a shramana, a bhikshu. A brahmana is someone who adheres to the supreme reality. A shramana is someone who makes effort. A bhikshu is someone who has renounced the world. This is a remarkable statement. So brahmano, so samano, sabhikhu in Pali. Because a lot of people think that the Buddha was somehow against the Brahmins or against the Vedas, and these are things you hear all the time, and they're simply not true. It is like me saying Ayumu is against British people. It's just not true. It's just simply not true. But Ayumu can say what he wants and people will continue to say it. Right? So similarly, people, sometime 1,000 years after the Buddha lived, people came up with this idea that the Buddha was against the Vedas or that he was against Brahmins, and they continue to say it. And I haven't found a single statement in evidence of that. It's all to the contrary. The Buddha is called a knower of the Vedas. He keeps bringing Brahmins as examples. He's called a Vedantagya, a knower of Vedanta, all these things. So for me, it's always, we have a saying in Sanskrit, Roma harishashcha jayate, that my hairs stand on end when I hear that. It's like saying Ayumu doesn't like British people, Ayumu doesn't like people in Leicester, he doesn't like Scots, right? And Ayumu's horrified when he hears it. It's just not true. But people continue to say it. So that's exactly the case here as well. So please, if you have that idea in your mind, just completely give it up. The Buddha was never against Brahmins. He was never against the Vedas. He praised the rishis of the Vedas, saying they're enlightened and so forth. Okay? Please keep that in mind. And remember here, so brahmano, so samano, sabhikkhu. But coming back to the meaning here. So the Buddha says in the previous teaching that all these extreme things, going naked, matted hair, all these things, they don't really free your inner being. But even if you are, wonderfully adorned, beautifully adorned, if you are calm, insightful means that you understand your states, that you understand, you see, not having outer things, but understanding your states. And if you have lain aside aversion, anger towards all beings, that is the key point. That is what frees you. Because in aversion, there is so much negativity. It is really that, we could say, energy or that state or that cluster of states or that assembly of states, that pattern of states which causes all the problems and all the troubles. It's such a precious, clear statement. Rare in this world, he now says, is the person who, out of a sense of insight, restrains from engaging in negativity and keeps himself awake, like a good horse that gives no cause to be whipped. I'll explain this. You see, a horse that has to be whipped in order to do its job only does its job because it is whipped. There is no insight. Similarly, there are so many people who need to have negative experience, negative difficulties, they need to undergo suffering. They need to undergo the criticism of others. They need to have some idea of a God that's going to punish them in order to be a little good or in order to engage a little bit in virtue. But the Buddha says, no, much, much better is a person who has insight, who themselves realizes the nature of aversion, the nature of negativity, the nature of anger. Not because I say it, not because the Bible said it, not because Jesus said it, not because Buddha said it, but because you yourself realize by observing that, hold on a moment, what does anger do to me? What does the negativity do to me actually? And over time, how does it actually express itself in outer situations? So he says, rare is a person who does it out of insight, rather than because the outer situation forces them to. I've seen so many people who, after the age of 30, I always tell you, 30 is like this, it's like from 29, everyone thinks everything is possible. After 30, it all goes downhill. And I always see, after 30, strangely, everyone changes. And all these so-called difficult things happen, and then everyone, I'm talking about spiritual people, let alone non-spiritual people. Spiritual people after the age of 30, they all seem to sort of realize that yes, all these things are somehow true. If only I had realized it earlier. I keep hearing this. It's always after 30. And all these difficult experiences come. You see the children, they're so happy, they're so full of freshness, so full of... And then suddenly, strangely, it all goes away. right? And all the misery and the bitterness and all these things arise. So if only we had that insight early on, then it would never go away. We would still have the freshness of a child. We would still have the openness of a youth. The other texts and scriptures that I have studied say that the true spiritual practitioner has the mind of a 16-year-old who is fresh with everything, always, this joy towards everything, this openness towards life, but also towards the spiritual path, this amazing childlike, not childish, childlike openness. What's going to come next? And that requires an inner openness. So maybe try to learn something from that. And there's a wonderful practice which also many Hindus do. And remember that in my vocabulary, Hindu and Buddhist is really not separable. It's inseparable. But this is practice that I have often seen, particularly in Tibet, in Nepal, some parts of northern India, which is to, on rainy days or also on other days, to go out, if one has time, and to collect worms or snails who are going to be crushed by a car or by bicycles or simply by people walking. This is an extremely beautiful practice, to collect those and to bring them to safety. And to do so very mindfully, like a meditation. So not like this, you see the slug and then you go, and then you, not like that. Because first of all, that instills fear in the animal. Secondly, it's really like, ugh, your hand feels really strange. And thirdly, it's just not nice, okay? People will think this is a crazy person, right? They'll call the police if you do that in the UK. So what I mean is, like a meditation, to very, very mindfully take the creature and bring it to safety, and to observe, first of all, the behavior of the creature, and secondly, your own mind as you do so. Something very fascinating. Because first of all, you can observe that every single creature wants to live and does not want to be harmed. That is what the Buddha just explained. Even the slug retracts itself because it thinks it's being harmed. It probably thinks a bird is coming and wants to harm it, wants to capture it. So the slug retracts and tries to protect itself. Even the worm, where everyone says, oh, the worm has no brain and all that. You say, well, it's not true. I'm not a biologist. I don't know. But you can see the worm instantly reacts in a way that it wants to survive, and it fears you. It fears you. And now when you don't do this just once, but when you do this 30 times, 40 times, as a practice, we live on a kind of street where when it rains, the worms think this is a highway, and then they're all on the street. So it's perfect. Sometimes when there is time, we can bring 100 worms to safety. And then Tipuraji says that, and then within half an hour they are back, right? Because they don't get it, right? So it's, and this is the other point, you see. The worms don't get it. They're bringing themselves into harm's way again and again. And from that you can also see, similarly, humans also sometimes don't get it and bring themselves into harm's way, or due to their negative states, because they just don't get it, cause themselves harm. There is so much to learn from that. So much to learn. Then you can also forgive others easily when they, let's say, when they behave in a harmful way towards you, because they don't get it. They don't get it that they're harming your relationship with them, that they're harming their own relationship. They're just acting from that. They don't get it. Just as the worm doesn't get it. So this is, by the way, what is called confusion in Sanskrit. They're confused. And then, most beautiful is to observe your own mind as you save the creature, as you bring it to safety. Your own mind. Because first of all, when you start this, you actually feel some aversion. You feel, this is ridiculous. This is crazy people from ancient India who had nothing else to do. They had nothing better to do than to bring slugs to safety. Right? That's the first thing you think. This is ridiculous. But then you think, all right, let me give it a chance. And then you first observe your own resistance to actually doing it. And then you find, initially it's really difficult. You let's say it's a snail, a worm. So you take a stick and then you think, this worm is so silly, it keeps falling down from the stick. So then you see, you have to find easier ways, better ways to do it. That means you become very careful and attentive. Then, as you do it, you realize, as I mentioned, that the creature keeps trying to protect itself. And the creature seems to be afraid of you. Then you think, this can't be it. I can't be doing this in a way that the worm is afraid of me. So then you try to come up with more creative ways, where you perhaps find a piece of paper, where you sort of gently let the worm go onto the paper so it's not so much afraid of you. Then you bring it away like that. So you see, you become creative in trying not to cause it fear and harm. And then as you observe your mind becoming creative, attentive, caring, suddenly something mysterious happens. A natural compassion wells up in you. A compassion that is not created, that is not contrived, that actually arises just because you're doing this. And because you suddenly feel the beauty of it, that this little creature, like any other creature, wants to survive and is so silly. It's so silly. It keeps going back into harm. It is so confused. And it's so pointless. And this sudden compassion wells up in you. And as you observe that compassion coming up in you, you strangely also observe a joy rising in you. And that joy is not created. It is not a joy that you are forcing in yourself. It's a joy that simply comes because you are doing that. And you feel connected to that life in the creature and to this wish to be happy, the wish to be safe. And then when you further practice, you begin to see, now if I can do this with these little creatures, why not with other humans? Why not with other beings around me? Why do I have to react with so much aversion? Let us say when someone criticizes me. I was recently asked by one of my very precious friends or students, if you like, that how can I deal with being criticized? Well, first of all, we can see, is the criticism valid? We just need to apply truth, a truthful mind. What's the problem? Okay, I can see, is the criticism valid? If it's not valid, then, like the creature is putting itself with confusion into harm's way, I can just consider, well, this person, in some sense, is putting themselves into a difficult situation by criticizing needlessly. And then I can be caring and kind, like I am caring and kind to the worm. Really, it's just practice. It's just practice. So, and then one more benefit of this practice is that it gives you an innocence, again, like that of a child. Because this is something that actually only a child would do. You see, to collect worms, bringing them to safety, to collect slugs, bringing them to safety. No adult does that. I mean, Tusharji, think about it. In your bank or financial institution where you work, imagine you would be suggesting that to them. Or imagine you would tell them that that's what you do as a hobby, right? They would think, okay, now he's completely lost it, right? They wouldn't give him the next deal. They wouldn't give him the next transaction, right? They would say, okay, he's lost it. I think we can't let him deal with clients anymore. If he's going to tell this to clients, then our reputation will be ruined, right? So, but look at what the so-called adult world has done to you. Only a child would go along with that. And that's exactly what Amma does. And his friends, when I suggest, hey, come on, let's go and save the snails, let's go and save the worms, they love it. They love it. And look at the compassion that they are naturally trained in. Ever since they do that, you can see they have become much kinder to others. Because you see, it's just a natural process. If you're saving the worms and the slugs, why on earth would you go and hurt others? Right? It's automatic in the child. But this also brings out the innocence in you, my dears. It really does. And when that innocence comes back, which all of you had as children, you all had it, when that comes back, then also the curiosity comes back, which the child has. This curiosity, this fascination with the truth of your own nature. How beautiful, how deep this could be, but also connecting with others. You can be much, much, much more innocent, much more genuine again as you connect with others. Because, again, look at children. The way they connect with others, the way they are all the time, not all children, but most children, the way they're all the time so, with open eyes, fascinated by others, always learning. Children always smiling. That's what Tushaji just pointed out. Even smiling is seen as unprofessional. Think about it. Where has the world reached to? Children always smiling. Always, right? And there's a wonderful film. I've unfortunately don't remember the name of this film, but the storyline is so brilliant. It's two children of two families that are neighbors in apartments. The two children had a fight outside, and I think one of the children hit the other child, and then sort of there was a little, like a scratch or something, and then with a stick. And then the parent of the other child, they come with the parents, and the whole film just takes place in the apartment. And the parents are fighting with each other and accusing each other, and you are this and you are that, and I've seen all. So all this negative aversion comes out. They're clashing with each other, and the whole film goes on and on and on. And it's only in the apartment. All the kinds of allegations they make towards each other. And it all started with the child outside. At the end of the film, you realize that 5 minutes after the fight occurred, the children were already playing again. Whereas the parents then spent 1.5 hours fighting with each other. So the message of the film is so great. Look at the innocence with which children go back and are instantly, forgiving. Instantly, the children quickly realize that it wasn't malintent, that the other child didn't want to. They quickly realize that. It's only for a moment that they have this instinctive, sense of protection, and they cry and they say, he did it. But then they're playing again. So you come back to this kind of innocence where you realize, and this is really the truth, my dears, no one in your life, even the worst person, ever really wanted to hurt you. Really not. It's always from a sense of confusion. It's always from a sense of not really seeing the consequences of that, not really knowing what they're doing. No one really wanted to hurt you. It's just sort of they're just stuck in their character, like the worm who's going back onto the road. They're stuck in that. Like the worm is going back to that pattern, because the stream is flowing when it rains, this is in our case, and the worm is going back to that stream. So it's going back to a specific pattern. In the same way, people who hurt you go back to a specific pattern again and again and again, not realizing the consequences. And I admit, sometimes they do that for their whole lifetime, and that's when it gets so difficult. So a parent is harming a child due to a negative pattern, and the parent will never see what they've really done. And they've caused so much harm, no doubt. It's so terrible. But even there, had the parent really had the wisdom to see what they're doing, Had they really not had that pattern, they wouldn't have done it. So you see, even there, one can truly forgive if you have real wisdom, if you really see the patterns, the consequences, what it really leads to, you can forgive. And moreover, you too have sometimes caused harm to others precisely because of these patterns. But if you truly look into your heart, you will say, I never really wanted to cause harm. It somehow happened. You hear that all the time from people. It somehow happened. I didn't really want to. And very rarely you do find someone who says, yes, I wanted to harm them. Right? But then at that moment, it's also just from aversion. And if you just wait for a few years, they'll also admit, no, I didn't really want to harm. I was just in a bad mood. Mostly it's just a bad mood. So this is the teaching of the Buddha, is that if we can apply insight rather than wait for all these negative consequences to come, then we're like a good horse that doesn't need all the whips, that doesn't need all the negative consequences, doesn't need to go through all that. And there are people like that. One of our good friends, who is an excellent practitioner, he already at the age of 13, 14, he realized these things. Very wise. He already realized the nature of the mind, the nature of karma, the nature of cause and effect. And he never got into this. He never had to undergo difficult things and all that. Really not. So till now, he's on a clear path. So very bright, very clear. So it is possible, you see, with insight. So the Buddha's teaching here is have insight. See it for yourself. Really look at the nature of your mind, at the nature of what your emotions do to you when you just let aversion like that do its activity. Look what it really does to you and to others. Have insight. Don't take my word for it. Atta dipo bhava. Be your own light. Famous statement by the Buddha. Sometimes it's also translated as Atta dipaha, as dvipaha. Be your own island. Don't, in the ocean of the mess, so to speak, be your own island. Don't take Vidyābhāskar as your island. Don't take Jesus as your island. Don't take Buddha as your island. Be your own island. So it depends on the translation, because in Pali, Atta dipo bhava and Atta, so this, it can really be either dvipaha or dipaha. Whereas in Sanskrit, it would be clearer. In Sanskrit, it would be clear whether he means be your own light or be your own island. That depends on the translation. But actually, both translations are great, right? Don't take someone else as your light. Take your own insight as your light. That's what he says. Panya dipo bhava. Take your insight as your light, or as your island. This is a tremendous teaching. So now, let us go back to the meditation. Remember that the Buddha and also the Buddha's students and their students and their students, so a whole tradition that emerged of meditation has many, 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 many different practices, but these are not random practices. They are always aligned. They are always integrated to a very specific goal. And this practice that I've started sharing as part of the Dharmapada teaching, not as part of the other teachings, please understand, as part of the other sessions, but very specifically as part of this Dharmapada teaching, is called the jhana practice overall. It relates to the jhanas. Jhanas are heightened states of concentration. There are 4 jhanas that are called the Laukika jhanas, the so-called mundane jhanas, and then there are 4 Lokottara jhanas. These are called the jhanas that are supra-mundane. Now this terminology is confusing for you, but I'm just trying to show you this is actually a very specific practice, very specific trajectory of progress. and it is related to heightened concentration. Whereas the other teachings I share with you are very often more related to awareness, relaxing, observing. This one specifically is related to heightening concentration, deepening concentration. And you will be surprised, concentration is not just something you either have or you don't have. It's actually something that is increased when we practice. And it is not only increased over 1 hour or over 20 minutes. When you practice daily in enhancing your concentration, it actually increases over days and over weeks and over months. So that when you've practiced increasing your concentration, then even if it's only 10 or 15 minutes a day, in 3 months, your concentration is actually higher. And this is something modern people don't understand if they haven't done it. I'm sure, I always like to bring myself as an example, but it shouldn't be meant in a bragging sense. I'm sure you all, if you have a good sort of knowledge of humans, I'm sure you all sense that I'm actually a highly concentrated person. That there is something weird about me, right? It's a little crazy. It seems a little crazy, but that's actually because of the heightened concentration. That's what you think is a little crazy about me. That's actually just the heightened concentration. Yeah? She's laughing, but it's true. Some people call me, I'm a little bit like Jack Nicholson. So is this actor, he always plays crazy people because he's so concentrated. So I don't know if any of you have seen the film The Shining. You have to watch it. It's a film with Jack Nicholson where he's an author in a hotel in the mountains, and they go to this hotel, and they stay there over the winter as caretakers, and all he does is constantly typing, and his eyes are totally concentrated. He looks like me, or I look like him. And then in the end, like after an hour into the film, his wife realizes that he's always typing the same sentence. So he's typing just one sentence. And I think it's something about the sun was shining over the mountains above the beautiful house, something like that. That's why the film is called The Shining. So he's just repeating one sentence all the time, and he's typing for 10 hours a day. And she realizes this because she starts looking at one of the pages, what he's actually writing, and she sees it's just one single sentence. And then, of course, the film takes a dark turn because he tries to kill his wife then. So I'm not like that, okay? So don't worry. But people have told me that I have this Jack Nicholson look. But the reason is because he's really concentrated. But in that case, he's concentrated on the wrong object, okay? He's concentrated in a crazy state. The purpose of the jhanas is not to become crazy. The purpose of the jhanas is to heighten your concentration, because you then enter a state, and that is called jhana. You enter heightened states, and within those heightened states, you can further concentrate. And as you deepen your concentration, something marvelous happens. You actually gain control over your thoughts. That which you all, or most of you, think is impossible actually becomes possible. You really gain control over your thoughts. Your thoughts do no longer go where they don't. This is just because of lack of concentration that the thoughts just happen to go where they go. It really is possible. And when you gain control over your thoughts, when your thoughts actually don't go away anymore, it is incredible what you can do. Then you can enter what is called samadhi. Samadhi is such a deep state of concentration. What we call samadhi in the Hindu tradition is called the fourth jhana in this tradition, the fourth jhana. And when you're capable of doing that, which is not so easy, don't think I'm claiming it is easy. When you're capable of doing that, then you are capable of entering the supramundane jhanas, which is then really your path to full enlightenment. So the jhana path is related to concentration. And it begins by taking a single object in your body. A single object. And ideally, you take an object of pleasure, which is a point in your body that naturally feels pleasurable. And this is not so easy. Some people think, well, what is he talking about? There is no place in my body that feels pleasurable. But it's not true. If you relax, very often it is a spot at the bottom of the spine where your body is touching the cushion. But for some it is in the heart. For some it is the navel. A spot that naturally exudes some subtle pleasure, some pleasantness. And once you have found it, you totally zoom your concentration in only on that spot, again and again. And you increase the pleasure just by concentrating on it. It's not that you're observing the pleasure, you're actually increasing it, you're reigning control over it by increasing it, concentrating on it. And as you slowly sense it, the slow, pleasurable sensation, further concentrate, further expand it till you sense some subtle joy. And if your mind wavers from the joy, or if you can't sense that, you come back to the pleasurable point. It's like you are coming back to the basis of the concentration. That which is real. Then come back to the joy and concentrate on it. Concentrate on it. Expand it. Sense its inner nature, what it is, what it leads to. If your mind is wavering, you come back to the pleasurable point. Always come back to the basis. Deeper concentrate on the joy, deeper, deeper, more intense. You can also breathe into it. You can coordinate your breath, that as you exhale, the joy expands like a balloon. As you inhale, you concentrate on the joy. As you exhale, it expands even more, becomes even more intense. There is a moment when you have done it properly where you sense a kind of zooming in of the mind. If you can sustain that zooming in, that sudden zooming, if you can sustain that, this then turns into the first jhana. That is a state of absorptive concentration. It is like your thoughts suddenly are heightened, are no longer so dispersed, are suddenly focused, suddenly in the zone. And if you lose it, no problem. You just come back to the point again, and again you repeat the cycle. So here we are finished. If there are any urgent questions. You see, the jhana practice has as its purpose concentration itself. That's what people often don't understand. They think, what are we concentrating on? they think the object of the concentration is what matters. But actually, it's the concentration itself. It is concentration for the sake of concentration. And that increases the concentration and increases it and increases it. And there is a tipping point when suddenly you can enter the state of concentration much, much faster than you could ever imagine. You can be relaxing, watching your Netflix show, and then you want to concentrate, and instantly you're in the state of concentration, which is something you can't imagine if you haven't practiced it. You can then switch between complete relaxation and total concentration. And this total concentration is only the beginning. It goes deeper, 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 higher, higher, higher. And it can go up to the point where your thoughts completely evaporate. And even the experience of your body evaporates only because of concentration. But that's very high level. Don't think I'm expecting you to be able to do that. But it really is just through concentration. And concentration for the sake of concentration. That is called the jhanas. That is called samyak samadhi in the language of the Buddha. The full concentration, right concentration. So, someone asks, what about a harmful creature like a virus? How can we be kind? Yes, well, we are all in a difficult situation because of a creature like that. It's a good question. One can ask the question, is a virus really a sentient being in the sense of like we are? Yes, it is. But in this case, it wants to harm us. So then we need to protect ourselves. It's also our duty towards ourselves to protect ourselves. And in this case, this virus seems to be without any there's no reasonableness in the virus. You can't reason with the virus. So that means we need to protect ourselves and all others against the virus in this case. So we can't say to the virus, sweet little virus, right? We want you as our pet, because the virus does not really want that. It just wants to live in us and destroy us, right? So we have to keep the balance. But of course, if you want to keep the virus as a pet, please go ahead. But please be vaccinated at least before you do so. So let us finish here. I wish you a wonderful weekend. And if you like, if you have, can I ask, just before we finish, did any one of you, did you sense the zoning in for a moment? This. So if you have sensed it, please continue. Practice some of the jhana practices. You can read about them also. There's a lot of material about the jhanas, even online, and it's not secret or something like that. Read about it. Please increase your concentration. It's really something remarkable. The zoning in, it just goes deeper, because you see, people think it stops somewhere. They feel exhausted and they think it stops somewhere. No problem, then do something else. But the next time you do it, it will actually be stronger. You see, so it's not that just because you feel exhausted, it's over. Someone says, I was recently diagnosed with ADD and I realized that maybe the reason for my lack of concentration. Do you have any tips for me? I understand that with practice it gets better. Yes, of course, ADD is quite a difficult one. In your case, madam, I would not suggest to try to do the jhanas. I would more suggest to work more on equanimity, on relaxing and accepting and observing. So equanimity really is a different kind of practice. Equanimity is identifying a state, but then just accepting it. Whereas the jhanas, what I'm talking about now, is a zoning in practice. This is something else. So I wish all of you to understand that these are different practices. It's not just one practice. So for you, madam, I would rather recommend equanimity. So you become aware of your restlessness and then accept the restlessness. That is more important for you at this stage. And when you see that you have increased the equanimity, when you see that, yes, actually I can recognize the restlessness and I can accept the restlessness. I don't need to fight with the restlessness. I can accept the restlessness. Then you could work on a further step. All right? Someone remarks, I had concentrated in my heart, but I felt pleasure in the first and second chakra. Wonderful. Exactly. Yes. But then, madam, in this case, you should focus on the first and second chakra. You should focus on the source of the pleasure. And don't feel shame or something. Don't think, oh, the second chakra is to do with sexuality. No problem. This is meditation. You're not going to explode because you're doing that. You're not going to turn into I don't know. You're not going to turn into some strange creature because of it. You're just using it as an object of concentration. Yeah. So, in fact, many practitioners feel it only in the first, at the bottom of the spine. And then it begins to tingle, begins to expand. And then it can turn into a bliss that reaches all the way through the spine up to the head. But it's just meditation. It's not about the object, you see. It's about the increased concentration that you're engaging with. Please understand the method. Okay, next time we will continue to explain this. There's no shame here. Some people only feel it in the second chakra. No problem, no problem. It's not about that. It's about the increased concentration, which then leads to deeper, deeper, deeper states. Hari Om. Wishing you a wonderful weekend, and please be happy and full of compassion. Maybe try saving some snails or some slugs, if you like.